Hello, Carl here again from selfsufficienthub.com, and it's another foraging video, and today we're going to talk about hogweed. So we've got down here some hogweed, and it really is one of the best edibles to learn and to know. It's everywhere. If you've got a verge like this, then you've got hogweed. And a lot of the things that we forage for, a lot of the wild edibles like dandelions and things like that, things that we're all very, very familiar with, we kind of eat them because they're a wild edible. We wouldn't necessarily pay for them in the shops because the flavour isn't that great. They're quite often a little bit bitter, or they're an acquired taste. And this is in a category all of its own. It is absolutely not that. It is a great vegetable replacement, and it finds its way onto some really high-end restaurant menus, and it is as good as any grown vegetable for flavour. It is just fantastic. So the bit that we're after is the young shoots, or at least the bit that I prefer is the young shoots. So like this, and a bit bigger, and we throw them in the pan in the boiling water for just a couple of minutes, and that gets rid of most of those hairs. And what I do, I boil them for a couple of minutes, and then I saute them in some butter for another couple of minutes, and they are delicious. The texture of the stems is very much like asparagus, although it's got its own flavour. So it hasn't got a flavour like any other vegetable, it's got its own flavour. It's a little bit cabbagey, a little bit asparagus-y maybe, and I get hints of aniseed from it, but it really is a fantastic edible. So if you're trying to introduce someone to wild edibles and you want to give them something that they're going to enjoy, and they're someone that's a little bit fussier, then this is definitely the way to start. It should make up part of everyone's diet because it grows everywhere and it's free. So there's a plant that's similar that you do need to be familiar with, and that is giant hogweed. So this is common hogweed, good. Giant hogweed, bad. Now, giant hogweed is bad because it's a very, very toxic plant, and it's very phototoxic. So the sap of giant hogweed, if it gets on your skin, it will cause quite severe burns. I don't recommend you go looking online, but you can, if that's your thing, to go and have a look at the damage that giant hogweed can do. But it's an invasive species, and DEFRA are trying to get rid of it, or at least will get rid of it if it's in public spaces. It's illegal to propagate giant hogweed. It's very, very dangerous. So the key difference is, if you look at this has got a very velvety feel. So the leaves, they feel very velvety, and that's because they're covered in these little tiny hairs. I don't know if the camera can pick them up, but yeah, hopefully, there you go. Whereas giant hogweed leaves are much sheener. So they do still have a few hairs on the giant hogweed leaves, but they're much sheener than this. And the stem, so it's got that purple part and a green part, and the amount of purple and green can vary from plant to plant. But what it doesn't have is the purple spots that you tend to find on giant hogweed. Now, this is the only time of year that you're likely to confuse it, because it's only when they're very young that the giant hogweed can look anything like regular hogweed. But once you get familiar with the two, you'll be able to tell them apart, and there's no real way you could confuse them once you know the plants. The other thing is, giant hogweed tends to have a more serrated edge to the leaves. It tends to be a bit toothier than the common hogweed. Now, giant hogweed tends to grow near running streams, and later in the season it's so much easier to tell apart because it really does its name justice. It grows over 4 meters tall. So common hogweed is much smaller plant. Now, it's a cut and come again plant, which is great because it is. So this one I've got in my hand, this is perfectly edible and perfectly tasty, but the younger shoots, I would say perfect shoots would be somewhere in between these two. So this is a little bit small and this is a little bit big. I'll see if I can find something that I would consider to be perfect, but it's a cut and come again plant, which is great. So on these verges that tend to get cut back by tractors once or twice a year, it's perfect. They'll come along, they'll take a lot of the older growth off, and then the new growth, which is what we want, will come back through behind it. So there you go, common hogweed. It's a great wild edible that you need to add to your foraging repertoire. As you can see, we've also got some chervil and some garlic mustard here behind me, along with cleavers, dandelions, some dead nettles and some stinging nettles. So there's 6 or 7 different wild edibles just in this meter or two in the shot here. So that's great. So there you go, giant hogweed. So here's an example of a perfect couple of shoots. This is exactly what I look for when I'm foraging. They're going to be lovely, particularly the tips from the last knuckle upwards. They're just absolutely delicious. They really are. Something to be aware of when you are foraging common hogweed is this also can be phototoxic, the sap from this, but only mildly so. But what I suggest you do, if you're not familiar with picking it and you're not sure how you're going to react, is you wear some gloves just to be on the safe side. But it's nothing like its cousin, giant hogweed, which very, very dangerous to get on your hands. So I've just got home and we've got a pan of boiling water here, and I've just put some butter in the pan there that's going to melt, and we've got our hogweed here. So we're going to pop that in the boiling water now. It's only going to want a couple of minutes, and then we'll pop it in the pan. So literally just 2 minutes later, and that's all wilted nicely. So we're going to drain that water off and then pop it in the pan. Into the pan, we'll toss that in the butter, and then literally another 2 minutes, and that'll be ready to serve. All done. So literally just 2 minutes in the boiling water, and then 2 minutes in the pan, tossed around, and that is all done. And I can tell you now that that served on a plate as one of the vegetables with your dinner will go down a storm. There you go. If you find these videos valuable, there's several ways you can support them. The easiest of which is just to like it, leave a comment down below, and of course subscribe to our channel. We'll be making videos like this all the time. The other thing you can do, which is really helpful, is to share it somewhere. Share it somewhere online, or pass it on to someone you think might be interested in it. All those things really make a difference. So thank you very much for your support, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.